Chapter 356, The Listener in the Bedroom. Madam, I will push Miss back to wash up first. Helena covered Huo Qingqing's legs with a blanket and turned her head to Jian Yun and said respectfully, Today's weather is not bad. I will go to the garden later. Qingqing will look for me when she is well. Jian Yun squinted her eyes and said with a smile. Huo Qingqing did not have any reaction. Helena acknowledged and then pushed Huo Qingqing, who was like a puppet doll, out the door. Jian Yun looked at Huo Qingqing's silent appearance and really admired this girl in her heart. How could she endure and be strong in her heart to be able to remain calm under this kind of situation and carefully plan the future? After Huo Qingqing left, Jian Yun made her own bed. There was a maid coming in to clean up. Jian Yun suddenly frowned and was a little worried in her heart because she thought that since Huo Chengfeng could place people by Huo Qingqing's side, it was still in her own home in Switzerland. Then this time, Huo Qingqing came to China. How could he not do anything? Jian Yun subconsciously looked up and looked around. She decided to let Chen Xin, Huo Liancheng's most capable bodyguard, come to the room to check. Chen Xin was a special scout and was very capable. If this room had been tampered with, he would definitely be able to find out. After breakfast, Jian Yun saw Chen Xin downstairs. With Huo Liancheng's wealth, there were naturally many bodyguards. His Huos had a special security team, and Chen Xin was the leader. He originally followed Huo Liancheng closely. This time, Huo Liancheng went out with the others. Because of this, after listening to what Jian Yun said last night, Huo Liancheng didn't worry about flying back immediately because he trusted Chen Xin's ability very much. Jian Yun. Chen Xin saw Jian Yun and greeted her. He was tall and thin. His face was dark and resolute. He could not be called handsome, but he was very manly. He was the same type as Jian Yun's little uncle Ouyang Beicheng. Moreover, he and Ouyang Beicheng used to be comrades, so he was very close to Jian Yun. He called her by her name in private. Jian Yun saw that there was no one around, so she whispered her concerns to Chen Xin. Chen Xin frowned and only nodded to signal Jian Yun to be at ease. Jian Yun was indeed at ease. She even went to the garden to look for Huo Qingqing. Half an hour later, her phone vibrated, and she received Chen Xin's message. There were only 2 words, end of work. These 2 words made Jian Yun's heart jump violently. Her back was like 10,000 ants crawling over it. It made her scalp go numb. Is it a pinhole camera or a bug? Jian Yun quickly called. She felt like her heart was about to jump out. When she thought about how her and Huo Liancheng's private lives were being watched, she felt a chill under her feet. Wait a moment. Young Master Huo is on the phone. Let's talk about it when we meet later. Chen Xin quickly hung up the phone. Jian Yun was standing in the pavilion. Even though the temperature outside was very high, her whole body was cold and restless. This Chen Xin was really anxious. Didn't he know that he would die of anxiety if he spoke halfway? Furthermore, why was Huo Liancheng's phone so coincidental? There were only Jian Yun and Huo Qingqing in the pavilion. Helena had just returned to the villa to get her things. King Cheng pulled Jian Yun's sleeves and used her eyes to ask her what had happened. Jian Yun turned her head to look around, but there was no one around. So she pretended to hold Huo Qingqing's hand and wrote down her suspicions and what she wanted Chen Xin to do in her palm. Huo Qingqing's brows immediately knitted together. He doesn't have that much courage, right? Huo Qingqing wrote and asked. I just have my suspicions. I feel very uncomfortable being stared at these few days. Jian Yun's brows were tightly locked and she was very worried. When she woke up today, her eyelids kept jumping. This made her feel uneasy. Don't worry. Big brother will take care of it. Huo Qingqing comforted Jian Yun. Jian Yun bit her lips and nodded. Everything was just her guess. She should go to Chen Xin later and ask him about it. She hoped she was just being paranoid. It was useless for her to worry now. Forget it. Let's wait for Huo Liancheng to come back. Just as she thought of Huo Liancheng, Jian Yun received a call from Huo Liancheng. She hurriedly picked it up. Hello. Is it convenient to talk? Huo Liancheng asked. Wait a minute. Jian Yun looked at Huo Qingqing and saw Helena walking towards them. She waved at Helena and signaled her to pick up the phone. Helena quickly walked over. Jian Yun smiled at Huo Qingqing and walked to the outside of the pavilion. She said to her phone, You can talk now. Were you with Qingqing just now? Huo Liancheng asked. Yes. Did Chen Xin tell you? Jian Yun asked worriedly. Yes. Huo Liancheng smiled. A pinhole camera? Or a bug? Jian Yun held her heart and asked nervously. What do you think it is? Huo Liancheng did not answer. Jian Yun was in a hurry when she saw Huo Liancheng was still calm. Let's get down to business. I have been feeling very bad these few days. It is as if I am not wearing clothes and was seen by others. Not wearing any clothes? Whoever dares to look at you, I'll dig out their eyes. Huo Liancheng pretended to be angry and his tone was fierce. Hey, Huo Liancheng. Jian Yun shouted. Yeah, I'm here. Huo Liancheng quickly said. What is it? Is it a bug? Jian Yun was extremely anxious. Are you nervous? She asked. I am not even afraid of you. What are you afraid of? Huo Liancheng laughed. We didn't say anything about confidential documents. We basically do things in our bedroom. We can at most let him hear you call your bed. Jian Yun heard him and her brain exploded. She yelled at the phone. Are you happy that someone heard me call you? I'm not happy, Huo Liancheng snorted. That's why I cut his ears. Jinyun rolled her eyes and asked angrily, "Can you be more serious?" "How do you want me to be serious?" "When I come back, I will lie down and let you do whatever you want, okay?" Huo Liancheng asked with a smile. He continued to adjust the tune. "Play, Jinyun." It had been a few days since they last met. He thought that she wanted to go crazy, but hearing her voice was almost unbearable. "Huo Liancheng, if you continue to do this, I will ignore you." Jinyun was so anxious that she felt like she was scratching a cat. However, Huo Liancheng was still talking nonsense, which made her so annoyed that she wanted to kick him. "Then what do you need to do to answer me?" Huo Liancheng laughed. Jinyun was confused by Huo Liancheng. She could not remember what she was going to say. She covered her forehead and could not help being angry. "I forgot." Huo Liancheng laughed in a low voice. "Duer, I miss you so much." "Yes, I miss you too." Jianyun lost interest in talking to Huo Liancheng on the phone. She planned to ask Chen Xin, so she wanted to hang up the phone and said absent-mindedly. As she spoke, she looked back and saw Huo Qingcheng looking in her direction with her head tilted. Helena sat there playing with her phone. Jianyun blinked and Huo Qingcheng also blinked. The two of them looked at each other and smiled. "Why does it sound like you are perfunctory?" Huo Liancheng was dissatisfied. Chapter 357, Don't Think Too Much. "It was." Jianyun sounded disgusted. Huo Liancheng was hurt. "Duo, why do I feel like you don't love me anymore?" "Did I ever love you?" Jianyun raised her eyebrows and deliberately sneered. "Don't think too much. I don't love you." "You dare say it again." Huo Liancheng was gnashing his teeth in anger on the other side of the phone. He wished he could pinch Jianyun to death. His position was not as high as a dog's? Ridiculous. "I don't love it." Jianyun was proud of herself. She felt that she must have been too gentle with Huo Liancheng recently. This guy was getting more and more shameless. He was very different from the cold look she had when she first met him. She still could not be too nice to him. However, before Jianyun could say the word "you," she suddenly felt her vision darken. A pair of strong arms suddenly wrapped around her and pulled her into a bush by the side. Her mouth was also blocked by someone. This kiss was caught off guard. Jianyun was so scared that her heart almost stopped beating. But after she reacted, the familiar aura that entered her nose made her wild with joy. Her eyes widened, and she stared greedily at the handsome face in front of her. Jianyun excitedly hugged Huo Liancheng's neck and passionately kissed. Hiss! Huo Liancheng felt the pain and let go of Jianyun's lips. He looked helpless. "Are you a puppy? Do you still bite?" Jianyun's eyes were sparkling. She was still biting Huo Liancheng's face. She was so excited that she asked, "Why are you back? Didn't you call me last night?" "I'm not worried about you. I'm worried about you, but you said you don't love me." Huo Liancheng was angry. He pinched Jianyun's cheeks and pulled her away. "You said I'm not as good as a dog." Jianyun smiled until her eyes narrowed. Her eyelashes were curved. She grabbed Huo Liancheng's hand and tilted her head to rub against his palm. Her voice was sweet to the point of being greasy. "No, I love you the most." Huo Liancheng hit Jianyun on the forehead. "Is this what I meant?" "Of course." Jianyun hooked her arm around Huo Liancheng's neck and kissed him on the lips. She smiled and said, "Can't you feel my sincerity?" "You only know when you touch it." Huo Liancheng stretched out his claws. Jianyun screamed and slapped Huo Liancheng's hand away. Her face turned red. She could not help but spit. "Don't you see where this is?" That soft touch made him fonder of it. Huo Liancheng hugged Jianyun and gently touched her pink lips. He squinted his eyes and smiled as he covered his hand again. He said, "My own garden. What else can it be? It will be seen by others." Jianyun's eyes were like silk and her breath was like orchids. "No one will see." Huo Liancheng lightly kissed Jianyun and whispered in her ear, "Even if they see it, it's nothing. I dug their eyes out." This kiss was long and warm again. Even the heat of the sun in the sky was lower. After the kiss ended, Jianyun leaned against Huo Liancheng's chest and was extremely attached to him. Huo Liancheng patted Jianyun's back and asked her, "Take me to see Qingcheng?" Jianyun raised her head to look at him. "Okay." The two of them walked out of the bushes and walked towards the pavilion. In the pavilion, Huo Qingcheng was still sitting there with her empty eyes. Helena was by her side and was picking up a thermos to let Huo Cheng drink with a straw. "Mr. Huo." Helena saw Huo Liancheng appear and was obviously stunned for a moment. Then she quickly lowered her head and bowed. "You can leave now," Huo Liancheng said. Huo Liancheng never had a good expression when facing outsiders. Helena did not dare to have any objections. She replied and quickly walked out of the pavilion. Before turning around the bush, she turned around and looked back with a complicated expression. Huo Liancheng squatted in front of Huo Qingcheng and looked at her. He was pleasantly surprised by Jianyun's words last night, but he still could not believe it. So when he looked at Huo Qingcheng now, his expression was a little cautious. Because he knew that there was a listening device on the wheelchair, Huo Liancheng did not want to alert the enemy, so he did not say anything. He just stared at Huo Qingcheng, but Huo Qingcheng ignored him. She kept her eyelids lowered and her face was expressionless. She was still the same empty and silly look she used to have. Huo Liancheng waited for a long time but did not see any reaction from Huo Qingcheng. The fire in his eyes seemed to have been poured over by a bucket of cold water. His heart also felt a little cold. He did not even have the courage to turn his head and ask Jianyun. Guo Lianqing felt that he must have had a dream last night. He should have heard all the clear words that Jian Yun said in his dream. Jian Yun also noticed Guo Lianqing's change from excitement to dejection. She pursed her lips and grabbed his hand to scratch it. Guo Lianqing raised his eyes to look at her and saw Jian Yun giving him a look to ask him to look at Huo Qingcheng. Guo Lianqing suddenly felt something was wrong. He turned his head and saw Huo Qingcheng, who had lowered her head and did not have any life, smiling at him. Her bright black eyes were full of smiles. Qingcheng. Guo Lianqing only felt a buzzing sound in his head as if something had exploded. He stared at Huo Qingcheng and his lips stuttered. He actually lost his words. Big brother. Huo Qingcheng originally wanted to tease Huo Lianqing, but when she saw Huo Lianqing's appearance, her heart softened. She did not have any other thoughts. Shh! Jian Yun was afraid that the siblings would not be able to control their emotions and say something, so she quickly gestured for them to be quiet. Jian Yun was now like a snake in a cup. She felt that Huo Chengfeng's people were watching everywhere, especially when there was a listening device on the wheelchair. Huo Qingcheng looked at Jian Yun, but Huo Lianqing quickly lowered his head and turned around. He seemed to have wiped his face. He then turned to Huo Qingcheng's wheelchair and looked carefully. Huo Qingcheng turned her head and Jian Yun also looked over. She saw Huo Lianqing's pair of big hands touching the wheelchair as if he was checking. In less than a minute, he stopped, and a black object the size of a button appeared in his hand. It was obviously a listening device. Jian Yun did not have time to exclaim that Huo Lianqing actually had this hand when she saw Huo Lianqing's cold face. He waved his hand and threw the listening device into the pond behind him. You can even find this. Jian Yun was stunned. Sister, you might not know, but I used to be in the army, and I was in the special forces. Huo Qingcheng laughed. To him, this level is simply a small case. This was the first time Jian Yun had heard Huo Qingcheng say such a long sentence. She was first stunned, then she laughed as well. Huo Lianqing looked at Huo Qingcheng with an indescribable complicated expression. Hey, why do you look like this? Jian Yun looked at Huo Lianqing and then looked at Huo Qingcheng. Suddenly, she slapped her forehead. Yeah, at a time like this I'd better leave. You guys talk. As she spoke, Jian Yun winked at Huo Qingcheng and smiled. She then turned around and left. She knew that Huo Lianqing was a man who kept his emotions in check. Huo Qingcheng was his closest sister to him. His only sister had returned after suffering so much pain. He definitely had a lot to say to Huo Qingcheng. She would definitely disturb them if she was here. Chapter 358. Happy sister-in-law. Jian Yun returned to the villa just in time to see Chen Xin. She quickly walked over and saw that there was no one around. She anxiously asked, "How is it?" Chen Xin's eyebrows moved slightly. He pulled the corner of his mouth and asked Jian Yun, "Young Master Huo should have told you, right?" Jian Yun rolled her eyes. "He said he did." Chen Xin revealed an undetectable smile. "Impossible. I checked it myself. There was nothing else except for something in the young lady's room." "Really?" Jian Yun squinted her eyes. She was a little skeptical when Huo Lianqing told her that he did not find anything in the bedroom. She had always believed in her sixth sense, but now even Chen Xin said the same thing. "You still don't believe what young Master Huo said?" Chen Xin raised his eyebrows. "All right, I guess I was overthinking it." Jian Yun rubbed her nose and frowned. Although she said so, she still felt a little uneasy. "Don't worry, with young Master Huo around, nothing will happen." Chen Xin squinted his eyes and hid the light in his eyes. While the two were talking, Helena walked over. When she saw Jian Yun, she asked anxiously, "Madam, why did you come back alone? Is Miss alone in the garden?" "Sir is with Qingcheng. What do you want?" Jian Yun felt uncomfortable looking at Helena now, but on the surface she was still as pleasant as before. "Oh, it's nothing. I just saw that the sun was too big, and I was worried that Mrs. Body would not be able to take it." Helena wiped the sweat on her head as if it was really very hot. But only she herself knew that she was not worried that Huo Qingcheng would get heat stroke. It was just a moment ago that she suddenly could not hear the sound from the eavesdropper. This made her very worried. She did not know if the thing was discovered or broken. However, no matter what the situation was, it was very bad for Helena because she had to sort out the content that she had overheard and report to Huo Chengfeng every day. If there was no report today, she would not be able to explain. "I see." Jian Yun stared at Helena and smiled. Helena suddenly felt her heart sink. She did not dare to look into Jian Yun's eyes again. The beads of sweat on her forehead were even more. Jian Yun saw Huo Lianqing pushing Huo Qingcheng in from the corner of her eye. She smiled and saw that Huo Qingcheng was no longer in a daze. As smart as she was, she naturally guessed that Huo Lianqing must have known the truth. Helena also saw Huo Qingcheng. Her originally pale face became even paler like paper. Sweat fell like rain. "Young Master Huo, miss this is." Chen Xin, who did not understand the situation, saw Huo Qingcheng with a clear face and bright black eyes. He was so shocked that he could not say anything. "I am fine." The one who answered Chen Xin was Huo Qingcheng. She was no longer as blank and empty as before. She even playfully blinked her eyes. Chen Xin widened his eyes in shock. However, although he had a belly full of questions, he chose not to say anything when he saw Huo Lianqing's cold expression. "Helena?" Huo Liancheng turned to look at Helena, who was already trembling in fear. He did not say anything and just looked coldly at her, causing Helena to cry out in fear. She plopped down on her knees and trembled. Explain. Huo Liancheng waved his hand and threw the button-sized eavesdropper in front of Helena. Mr. Huo, this I don't know. Helena still wanted to deny it. Chenshin, leave this woman to you. Huo Liancheng did not have the patience to continue pestering her. He already knew a lot of things from Huo Qingcheng. The reason why he did not immediately punish Helena was because he wanted to pick her up and use her instead. Chen Xin had followed Huo Liancheng for many years. With just a glance from Huo Liancheng, he knew what he wanted to do. Recruiting a few security guards, Chen Xin ignored Helena, whose face was already covered in dead ashes, and dragged her out. This kind of interrogation and torture naturally did not need Huo Liancheng to ask about it. Only Huo Liancheng, Jian Yun, and Jian Yun were left in the living room. Jian Yun tilted her head and looked at Huo Qingcheng. Are you not going to pretend? Big brother is here. I'm not going to pretend anymore. Huo Qingcheng blinked. Perhaps she had not spoken for a long time, so her pronunciation was not accurate. Her voice was also very hoarse. You still have the face to say it. Before that, I was also there. Why didn't I see you looking for me? Huo Liancheng asked coldly. Huo Qingcheng felt very wronged. The only thing that I have truly regained consciousness is this half a year. Although I woke up half a year ago, I have been lying in bed. Helena keeps feeding me medicine. Every time you come back, you only stay here. I have been sleeping on the bed for that 1 or 2 days, and I have no chance to tell you. Furthermore, Helena saw that I was especially tight and even used a listening device to monitor. Even if she saw you, she was by my side and I did not want to alert her. Furthermore, you are so impatient. There were a few times that I hinted to you, but you did not react at all like a big stupid cow. I thought that it would be fine. Anyway, I have tolerated it for so long. Fortunately, This was the first time Jian Yun heard someone dare to describe Huo Liancheng as a big stupid cow. She could not help but want to laugh. She saw Huo Liancheng's brows drooped and his face was bring. Stupid girl. Huo Liancheng endured for a long time and only said these 3 words. He had no way to deal with Huo Qingcheng. 0 big sister, big brother scolded me. Huo Qingcheng was also powerful and immediately complained to Jian Yun. Don't let him in tonight. Jian Yun sweated a little. Huo Liancheng's mouth twitched. He glared at Huo Qingcheng. Don't think that I can't do anything to you just because you are not well. Huo Qingcheng held her tongue. Big sister, big brother threatened me. All right, I'll help you beat him. Jian Yun patted Huo Liancheng's arm lightly. Huo Liancheng grabbed her hand and held it in his palm. Huo Qingcheng sneered. Sister, are you hitting him? It is clearly a caress. Huo Liancheng could not take it anymore. Little girl, did you lie down for too long and lose your mind? You're still talking nonsense. Huo Qingcheng pouted and said discontentedly. Didn't they see that the atmosphere is very heavy and want to liven it up? Enough. He turned to Jian Yun and said, There's a party tonight. Come with me. Okay. Jian Yun pursed her lips and smiled. Her eyes were full of attachment and gentleness as she looked at Huo Liancheng. Sister, I really envy you. I am so old. This is the first time I have seen my brother be so gentle to women. Huo Qingcheng sighed and shook her head. In the past, he had always been very cold to women. I still remember that there was a beauty with blonde hair, blue eyes, front, back, and 36F, who came to confess to him. Guess what happened? What? Jian Yun was curious. He actually said that the breasts of a beauty. Huo Qingcheng was just about to say something when she heard Huo Liancheng's cold rebuke. Shut up. Why are you talking so much? I will send you to the hospital neurology department for a checkup. Chapter 359, Enemies Have a Narrow Road. Sister, look, brother is mean to me. Huo Qingcheng was extremely wronged as she held her mouth. She looked at Jian Yun and complained. Ignore him. Quick, you didn't finish what you said just now. Jian Yun shook off Huo Liancheng's hand and ran to Huo Qingcheng's side. She was really curious about what Huo Liancheng would say about that beauty. I don't dare to say. Look, big brother is staring at me. Huo Qingcheng pretended to be very scared. Don't be afraid. He dares to glare at you. I will beat him up. Jian Yun put her ear to Huo Qingcheng's mouth and urged. Quickly tell me. I am so anxious. Huo Qingcheng wrinkled her nose at Huo Liancheng as if she was showing off. Then she smiled and bit her ear with Jian Yun. Huo Liancheng could not stop it even if he wanted to. He saw Jian Yun's eyes were wide open and her mouth was also opened into an O shape. So mean. Also, in the past, there was a female celebrity who confessed to Yang at the awards ceremony. He directly ignored her and made her so ashamed. The more Huo Qingcheng said, the more excited she became. Huo Qingcheng, that's enough. Huo Liancheng was really speechless. Ever since he heard Jian Yun talk about Huo Qingcheng waking up last night, he had thought that he would see a sentimental and taciturn younger sister. Who would have thought that this girl had suffered such a serious injury and had been lying down for 6 years? But her temper was still as jumpy as before. Talking about his past matters in front of Jian Yun, was she afraid that the world would not be chaotic? I was just joking. Huo Qingcheng curled her lips and grabbed Jian Yun's hand to act coquettishly. I lay down for too long and still want to play down later on. It's so boring. I won't be bored anymore. Hu Liancheng stared at Hu Qingcheng's legs. Can you walk? No. Hu Qingcheng lifted the blanket and pointed at her legs. For the first time, she looked disappointed. I don't have any strength or time to train. I suspect I'm going to be paralyzed. Nonsense. Jian Yun knocked Hu Qingcheng on the head. Just practice more. Actually, Jian Yun was also surprised that Hu Qingcheng had such an arrogant personality. Hu Liancheng had rarely mentioned her before. In Jian Yun's impression, she had always thought that Hu Qingcheng would be so arrogant. Hu Qingcheng was that kind of lady from a rich family. She had the temperament of a beauty and had such a cold elder brother. No matter what, she had to be a cold beauty. However, hearing her words today was really disillusioned, but it was also indeed cute and likable. All right, big sister, I believe in you. Hu Qingcheng winked at Jian Yun. Jian Yun looked at Hu Liancheng thoughtfully and asked, how do we deal with Helena? Also, other than her, is there anyone else in the family? Hu Qingfeng? Hu Qingcheng could not help laughing when she heard that. Sister, don't think that Hu Qingfeng is so powerful, okay? If he was really powerful, he would not use these despicable methods. You have to believe in my brother. Jian Yun held Hu Liancheng's arm and was a little conflicted. But I still feel that it is easy to dodge a spear in the open and difficult to guard against an arrow in the dark. Liancheng, you have to be careful. Don't worry. Hu Liancheng touched Jian Yun's face and said gently. Although Jian Yun was married to Hu Liancheng and he was the most intimate person in the world, Jian Yun had to admit that she knew very little about Hu Liancheng. She only knew that he had the enviable wealth and outstanding ability. But she did not know how great his ability was. That night, Jian Yun dressed up and went to the cocktail party with Hu Liancheng. It was a business party, and the people attending were all the elites of the eastern China region. The party was held in a 5-star hotel in Qinghu City. When Jian Yun and Hu Liancheng arrived, the party had already started, but as soon as the two of them appeared, they became the center of attention. Jian Yun had already seen how popular Hu Liancheng was and could adapt to the people who greeted him. However, she did not expect to meet Xu Haiyang at the party. This was the first time they had met since Xu Haiyang was drugged outside Qing University. Jian Yun originally thought that she would be very angry when she saw Xu Haiyang again, but when she saw Xu Haiyang standing in front of her with a disappointed look, her heart was surprisingly calm. Yun Duo. Xu Haiyang almost greedily stared at Jian Yun's face. It had been a long time since he saw her. Her complexion was very good. Her originally beautiful face was a little rounder, but it was even more beautiful, adding a trace of feminine charm. Especially her pair of eyes, which were black and white with clear watery light. As she looked around, the flowing light seemed to be able to take one's soul. Hello. Jian Yun's tone was extremely faint. It was completely the way she treated strangers. Hu Liancheng and the Qinghu City chief had something to talk about. She was alone here, and there were already quite a number of people who came to hit on her. She had seen Xu Haiyang when she came in earlier, but she did not expect him to still have a face to come and talk to her. Are you well? Xu Haiyang could not bear to give up such an opportunity. It was as hard as ascending to heaven for him to see Jian Yun now. If she did not pick up his phone, she should have changed her phone number recently. She did not even tell him her new number. This made him feel very uncomfortable. Of course. Jian Yun raised her eyebrows. She lowered her head and took a sip of the fruit wine in her cup. She lowered her eyes and hid the ridicule in her eyes. Xu Haiyang actually had the face to ask her how forth. This person was the most beautiful memory in her youth, but he was also the person who hurt her the most. Jian Yun's distance made Xu Haiyang suddenly lose the courage to continue talking. He lowered his head and could not hide the loneliness in his eyes. The corner of his mouth raised a self-mocking smile. Yes, of course you are doing very well. I am sorry to disturb you. After saying that, Xu Haiyang turned around to leave. Jian Yun also turned around. Currently, she no longer had any feelings for Xu Haiyang. The injuries 6 years ago and the wait 6 years ago were like a dream to Jian Yun. This man was really too weak. He had made a mistake back then and chose to leave. 6 years later, he suddenly appeared and wanted to get back together. Jian Yun was very curious. Could it be that he was so confident that no matter what he did to her, she should wait for him at the same place? Yi, isn't this Jian Yun? Jian Yun had just walked a few steps when she suddenly heard someone mention her name. This voice was very familiar. Jian Yun did not need to turn her head to know that the person who spoke definitely had a cautious and fawning smile on his face. Lin Lanlan was really enemies on a narrow road. To actually be able to meet her in such an occasion. Jian Yun, it really is you. While they were talking, Lin Lanlan had already walked in front of Jian Yun and looked at her with a face full of surprise. I just heard that you came and I wanted to look for you. I did not expect to meet you here. Jian Yun only stared at Lin Lanlan and did not say a word, but her eyes did not conceal the mocking smile in the slightest. Lin Lanlan seemed to not be able to see that Jian Yun did not want to talk to her at all and was still talking to herself. At this time, there were already many women surrounding them. They were all the women that those men brought over tonight. Lanlan, you and Mrs. Ho know each other? The man standing next to Lin Lanlan had a face full of surprise. He walked over and hugged Lin Lanlan intimately. One look, and one could tell that the relationship between the two was not simple. Chapter 360. Your man is very strong. He was a middle-aged man in his 40s, with glasses and a fair head. He was a little fat, with a big belly, but his eyes were sharp and he seemed to be calculating something. Jian Yun knew this man. He was a representative of Korean cosmetics in Qinghu City and was considered wealthy. However, this Mr. Li seemed to be married. So Lin Lanlan was third, or was he just a playmate brought out by a man's act? However, no matter what Lin Lanlan was, Jian Yun did not care. That's right, Jian Yun and I are high school classmates. Lin Lanlan did not mention that she and Jian Yun were half-sisters. Although she did not take Jian Yun seriously, there was Huo Liancheng behind Jian Yun now. She had encountered trouble with Huo Liancheng before, and knew Huo Liancheng's family background. She was not stupid enough to court death. If she revealed her relationship now, it would only make Huo Liancheng hate her, and it would not benefit her future plans. There's actually such a relationship. What a coincidence. Mr. Li's eyes lit up when he heard that, and he hugged Lin Lanlan even tighter. Then he took a step forward and reached out to shake hands with Jian Yun. Mrs. Huo is indeed born beautiful. Mr. Huo is really blessed. Before Mr. Li could get close to Jian Yun, he was blocked by two people on the left and right. There was a man and a woman blocking his way. They were around 20 years old. They were handsome and cold, and their eyes were fierce. These two are? Mr. Li was also a little confused. He didn't know when he had offended the two of them. You two, get out of the way. Jian Yun smiled faintly. The two of them listened to her words and separated. They stood behind her and still stared coldly at their surroundings. Jian Yun did not explain their identities, but everyone present reacted. These two were clearly bodyguards. Lin Lanlan also stared at the two people without blinking and was shocked in her heart. When she realized that these two should be bodyguards, her heart was immediately filled with jealousy. Why did Jian Yun have such good luck to actually live the life of a wealthy lady? Looking at her outfit, it was clearly custom-made by a big shot. And that jewelry, just the necklace alone, was something she could not afford in her entire life. Lin Lanlan stared at Jian Yun and could no longer hide her jealousy and hatred towards Jian Yun. Mr. Li, my husband does not like me to be too close to a stranger. Jian Yun's lips curled up. She did not have any interest in talking to Mr. Li. She wanted to find something to eat now and was hungry. Lin Lanlan's face was really disgusting. This woman was really two-faced. When they first met outside the coffee shop a few months ago, she was still showing off. She was dressed in hot clothes. How could she pretend to be a white lotus flower in such a short time? She pretended to be pitiful all the time, and tried to get close to her in front of everyone. After being treated coldly, she pretended to be pitiful and bullied. It was really disgusting. Mr. Li awkwardly withdrew his hand and revealed a smile on his face. Yes, Jian Yun nodded and considered it as a greeting. Then, she turned around and walked towards the buffet area. Before she came, Huo Liancheng had told her that she did not need to force herself to deal with those women. Jian Yun understood what he meant. It was, your family's man is very powerful. So powerful that only other people can curry favor with you. There is no need for you to welcome anyone. But Jian Yun did not care about others, but it did not mean that those people did not come to find her. She came to the buffet area. Behind her, there was a hubbub. A large group of people followed behind her. All of them came to talk to her. Some praised her dress's beauty, and some praised her jewelry's beauty. Jian Yun had always been thin-skinned. She was too embarrassed to face these kind intentions, and could only eat while dealing with them. On the other side, Mr. Li's eyes stared at Jian Yun, but did not move away. At the same time, he hugged Lin Lanlan and pinched her butt. He asked in a vulgar manner, You and Mrs. Huo are really classmates. Why do I see that she's very cold to you? Lin Lanlan suppressed the disgust in her heart and said with a smile, No, that person of hers is just like that. She has a cold personality. A while ago, during a classmate gathering, someone arranged for her. She uploaded the audio. I think she has some misunderstanding about me. Lanlan, can you help me set up a thread and let Mrs. Huo give me a chance to meet Mr. Huo? Mr. Li rolled his eyes and made a request. Lin Lanlan frowned awkwardly. As long as it is settled, I will satisfy all of your requests. Mr. Li thought that Lin Lanlan was pretending to ask him for money and gifts. There was coldness in his eyes, but the corner of his mouth still lifted up. He smiled and said, Didn't you want money? As long as I can see Mr. Huo, I can give you 1 million. Really? Lin Lanlan bit her lips and began to struggle because she knew that Jian Yun would not give her this chance at all. But now she really needed money. 2 million. Mr. Li thought that Lin Lanlan thought it was too little, and the sneer on his lips became wider. He added another 1 million. Compared to the value of meeting Huo Liancheng, these 2 million was not worth mentioning. All right then, I'll go and try. Lin Lanlan still did not dare to guarantee, but the temptation of money stirred the string in her heart and made her restless. She was used to living a luxurious life, but Jian Dongming's bankruptcy made her fall from heaven to hell, and Lin Rong was locked up again. Originally, she wanted to find Jian Yun without any previous grudges and try to get close to Huo Liancheng through Jian Yun. Just like how she used to get close to Xu Haiyang through Jian Yun. As long as Huo Liancheng could take a fancy to her, she was confident that she could snatch this man from Jian Yun, who made the whole world go crazy for him. At that time, what kind of life would she want to live? Lin Lanlan was very confident in herself. All these years, there were countless men worshipping under her dress overseas. She did not believe that Huo Liancheng would not take the bait. As long as it was a man, there would be a wild beast in his heart. A woman like Jian Yun was too arrogant and too reserved. She would not lower her head to a man. This kind of woman, no matter how beautiful she looked, how strong she was, and how smart she was, she's just a wooden beauty. Xu Haiyan had told her personally that Jian Yun wouldn't let him do anything. She wouldn't even let him touch her. It was really boring. Lin Lanlan agreed and started to think about how to get close to Jian Yun. Or, she could directly look for Huo Liancheng. On one side, Lin Lanlan was thinking about something. On the other side, Jian Yun was already so annoyed by the women beside her that she was about to go crazy. Fortunately, there was still Chen Feng and Xia Lu by her side, 2 bodyguards helping her block those people from getting close, but even so, they were almost unable to take it. But tonight was destined to not be peaceful. First, Xu Haiyan hit on her. Then Lin Lanlan tried to get close to him. Jian Yun did not expect that she would actually meet Jian Dongming here. Tonight's cocktail party was organized by Qinghu City's Business Recruitment Bureau. Those who could come to participate had a certain status. With Jian Dongming's current status, he did not have the qualifications to get an invitation card. Clearly, Jian Dongming came in with others.